Let's do the trend where it's like things that my exes did and I still stayed, but best friend edition, because we about to live out all my traumatic experiences right now. My best friend, we're hanging out at my best friend's house, right? And she's getting a call from her man. Just a backstory, I didn't know this man, he didn't know me. Like, we never met, like, in person, okay, ever. Not one conversation with this man, right? So she answers the phone and she puts him on speaker. He didn't know he was on speaker, but she puts him on speaker and the phone was like, oh, like, I'm gonna have to call you back because I'm with my best friend, like, Ari, like, and he's like, the Ari that looks like a man, the Ari that looks like a god, that ugly ass bitch named Ari. When I tell you, my jaw dropped because I did not know this man from nothing. He did not know me, okay? He went to a totally different school. He was in a totally different district. So why the fuck would he talk shit about me? She literally didn't defend me when he said all of that, and he didn't know he was on speaker. So right when after he said that, I was like, oh, you bald-headed ugly ass man, like, who the fuck do you think you are? I basically was cursing back at him because he did not know he was on speaker. And literally, like, I expected my friend to like defend me, but why the fuck would she defend me if she's the one talking shit to him, saying that I look like a man and shit? Like, I'm pretty sure that's where he got it from. And then I was still friends with her. Me and this same best friend got invited to this pool party, right? And this pool party was gonna have all like the cute guys from the school, right? And she knew that one of those guys that were going, I had a crush on. So we get there, right? It's all cool, it's all chill. And please tell me why she starts talking to the guy that I had a crush on. Like, she starts talking to him. I went up to them, right? Thinking that my best friend, you know, she was talking to him so she could, like, kind of introduce me, right? And you know what this girl says? You know what this bitch says? Oh, this is Ari, the girl that I told you about that peed in the bouncy house when we were in middle school. Why would you say that story? Like, why? Like, what? First of all, why did you tell him that story like if it was relevant, like if we were in middle school? Second of all, do you really have nothing else to talk about? Like, your life really isn't that interesting. The first time you're meeting this man, you tell him about that embarrassing story about me. What? Her plan ended up not working because he still wanted to fuck with me, so but he ended up being a fuckboy, so shout out to my fiance, we love him. So after that happened, I already knew this bitch was out to get me. I knew we weren't going to be friends anymore. So wait until I tell you what she did after we stopped being friends. So I didn't confront her about the thing. Like, I just ended up like kind of like not talking to her anymore. I kind of just distanced myself from her. And she just ended up telling people that we're not friends anymore. And then I was like, okay, bitch, we're not friends anymore. You're right. It's actually so funny because a week after we stopped being friends, she already had a new best friend, babe. And imagine just living life as a baddie does, right? And posting a fire Instagram photo. If you don't follow me on Instagram, please go follow me. It's gonna be in the bio. I post so many like outfit, cute photos, you know what I mean. And then receiving a comment under my post that I just posted, and she commented, you think you're all that and you're not. And then I press on it to see who it is, and please tell me why it's the new best friend of that bitch that did me dirty. What? It's actually so funny because that new best friend, like, babe, I didn't even know you went to my school. Like, the fuck? Like, imagine sending your little minion to go hate on me instead of you hating on me yourself. Okay. Like, it's actually quite embarrassing because I would never hate on a girl. Like, that shit gives man energy. Like, ew.
I literally can't stop thinking about the time that a friend of mine gave me this hand chain, and she was like, happy birthday, this is for you, this is such a collector piece, look, I have one, I love it, I want you to have one too. I was so impressed and actually shocked that she got it for me, and I was like, wow, I've always admired it on you. And she's like, I know, you complimented me on it before, so I thought like you should have one too. I had to pause because my child was not having it yesterday, but here I am to tell the rest of the story. So she's like, yeah, I know, you compliment mine all the time, you should have one too, so here you go. Now we can match. And I loved it. I was so grateful. And I eventually ended up buying a second one. The obsession grew, and then I bought a third one. Around the time that I bought the third one, I was planning this shoot for this new business that I was launching. And I was telling this friend, I was like, I'm going to do my makeup for it and my hair and whatever. I'm not going to like waste any money, blah, blah, blah. Dude, she was like, no, I'll do your hair and makeup. I would be happy to do your hair and makeup. And I was like, oh, okay. And she and her sister decided to do their hair and makeup for me for the shoot. Around like 30 minutes into the shoot, I felt like the vibe had changed and they were being really weird. They were whispering a lot and like talking a lot, but they were kind of working together to do my makeup. So I thought that maybe they were just talking about like the work they were doing with the makeup and like maybe they wanted to fix certain things and whatever, because at a shoot things can get a little hectic. So we wrapped the shoot. It was New Year's Eve. Then we go home, everybody goes home, and they both text me and they're like, happy New Year's, like wishing you abundance, amazing year, blah, blah, blah. I text them back, I say the same thing, and then I don't hear from either of them for like 4 days. And I've like texted them and they're not answering me. So then I get a message from the one, and she's like, have you noticed that I haven't been answering you? And I'm like, yeah, what's going on? And she's like, I think we should talk on the phone. So we got on the phone, and basically she tells me that she notices that I have 3 hand chains and that she was really offended that I had bought a 3rd one without asking her permission. I was so shocked. I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry that that bothered you. And I didn't even think to ask your permission because I don't think I need to ask your permission, but sorry if that bothered you. And she was like, thank you for receiving that so well. So I'd appreciate it if you don't wear it anymore. And I was like, I guess I could just like not wear it around you, but whatever. And we kind of ended the phone call there, but like I felt really weird, and clearly so did she, but it was like a very shocking conversation. So not everything that needed to be said was said. Fast forward to like a week later, I call her and I'm like, hey, that like didn't land very well with me actually, and I think it's kind of fucking weird that you're asking me to like not wear it around you. She's like, no, I'm not asking you to not wear it around me. I'm asking you to get rid of it because I don't want you to own 3. I have 3, and I don't like that you copied me and now you own 3. I was literally shocked. I was like taken aback, like literally, what the fuck? I'm like, this is getting so weird. Like, this is so odd. Like, we need to have like a full-on conversation about this. So we plan a day to get on the phone and have a conversation about it. And basically, the day comes to have the conversation, and she's like, I'm not feeling it. I'm emotionally drained. I can't get on the phone with you right now. I'm like, okay, no problem. When do you want to do it? She's like, tomorrow. We get on the phone to have this conversation about this fucking hand chain. And she is like, okay, so let's start. And I hear her open a notebook. She starts going off, reading line by line by line over our 5-year friendship, all the times that I pissed her off. I hear pages literally turning, and she's getting louder and louder and louder. And I keep trying to like speak, and she's like, don't interrupt me. She basically told me that I copy and paste. She was like, copy and paste, copy and paste, copy and paste. That's all you do. You copy and paste my life. You want to be me. This is crazy. And I was like, this is so bizarre. Like, I have 2 sisters. We copy each other all the time. I don't see it as copying. I see it as more like being inspired by someone, I guess. I also didn't think anything of it that you like started my fine jewelry collection with this hand chain, and I just like started buying more. Also, I've always loved jewelry. Like, that's just kind of, it was just like, I don't even know how to explain it. It felt so odd to even explain. Basically, the conversation kept going on, and she was screaming at me and just telling me how fake I was and how I'm just this awful person who's trying to steal her life, and she doesn't like when her friends have anything that she has, which is ironic because she had bought it for me in the first place, and that I needed to apologize and get rid of it, and I couldn't even have it in my home, and all this kind of shit. And I was like, you know what? I can't do any of that. And she's like, I thought you were going to say that, so I want you to know this friendship is officially over. I will be unfollowing you on every social media. We are not connected anymore, and I'll miss you as my friend. And I hung up because I was like, this shit is like bonkers, beyond bonkers. Like, I feel like I'm in some weird fucking alternate universe, and I don't even know what's happening. And basically, like, we didn't talk for a year. And then a year later, I received an email from her telling me, like, how she's changed and grown and, like, all this kind of stuff. And by that time, I had already had my baby. And I was like, get the fuck. I can't even re-enter this fucking shit. Because she also said we both needed to take responsibility for the things that we had done in that same email. And I was like, no, you're not going to tell me what I need to take responsibility for. So that is a clue to me that I'm going to walk away. But
shit that happened while I was a 911 dispatcher. Here's my most memorable 911 call that I ever took. While I will never forget this call as long as I live, it has been a long time. This call was in either 2004 or 2005, so I may not have all of the details 100% correct, but the gist of it will stick with me for my lifetime. A little backstory. So the technology may have changed, but back then in 2004, 2005, we dispatched off what was called a CAD map. Now, the CAD map had to be manually updated. So as new subdivisions were being built, new addresses were being added, those addresses had to be manually entered by someone in order for them to validate. So if you call in and you say the address you're calling about is 123 Main Street, I manually type in 123 Main Street, but then I validate the address. When I validate the address, it pulls it up, the location on my map. It also tells me where all the other officers are in relation to that because they had automatic vehicle locators in their cars. And it also would tell me the call history that happened at that address. It wasn't uncommon because we were a pretty fast growing city. It wasn't uncommon for an address to not be in the system if it was in a new subdivision or a new development area. I was working a weekend day shift and this lady calls 911 and the address that she gives me does not validate, and I try a couple different ways. She tells me the location of about where it's at, and I went ahead and just put it in at a nearest cross street, and then I manually typed in the address, and we dispatched it out over the radio as that address in XYZ subdivision, closest to the intersection of blah, 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 so that everyone would know that it was an unvalidated address in a new subdivision. So we've already got help on the way while I ask her what's going on. She is very upset, and I finally am able to get her to calm down, and she tells me that she has a new baby and the baby has drowned in the bathtub. She says that she only put a little bit of water in the bathtub, and she turned around only for a second, and she took a short step out into the hallway to get towels, and when she came back in, the baby was face down in the water and the baby was blue. So I followed our protocol. We have these little medical cards. When you have someone with a medical emergency, you ask them XYZ. It says, okay, if they answer this, then you go to this tab. If they answer this, you go to this tab, and you read these instructions. So I'm reading through the cards, and I'm getting her to do CPR, or I'm trying to get her to do CPR. I will never forget. I asked her, what is the baby's name? You always try to humanize, right? You ask the caller their name. You call them by name. You ask the victim's name. You humanize. And the baby's name was Jacob. Not uncommon at all for someone to be hysterical when you're trying to give CPR, right? Because that's traumatic. And so I'm giving her the instructions, and something just wasn't right. The pace was not right. Something wasn't right. So I asked her to count the compressions out loud and the breaths. I don't know if we still do, but back then you did compressions and breaths for a newborn. And something just wasn't right. When she started counting, she was like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It just wasn't working. And then the phone disconnected. And then when I tried to call her back, she didn't answer. Not super uncommon, because a lot of times people just lose their shit during 911 calls, right? Or I thought maybe the officers had arrived on scene, or maybe the fire department had arrived on scene. So before I tried to call her back again, I checked with the people that were working the radio, and no one had made it on scene yet. Come to find out, everyone had gotten lost because this location was hard to find. The first person that ended up being on scene was the fire chief. He happened to live very close to there. He was out in his civilian vehicle. He had his radio with him. He knew exactly where it was. So the fire chief ended up being the first person on scene. Also not relevant to the story, but we called him Frankie Nine Fingers. So Frankie Nine Fingers shows up on scene first, and he knocks on the door, and no one answers. And I'm calling, and no one's answering. The story goes that he walks back to his personal vehicle. He's going to retrieve his cell phone and call dispatch and check. And as he's walking back to the car, the woman comes outside and she closes the door behind her, and she's very upset. And he's like, where's the baby? And she's like, the baby is inside. And when he tells the story later, he says that was his first red flag. Why wouldn't she have the baby in her arms? If she knows that she's called for help and someone's knocking on her door, he expected for the mother to greet him with a lifeless baby in her arms to help. So she doesn't let him in the house. She goes and retrieves the baby. The baby, come to find out, is 9 months old, I believe. 6 to 9 months old, I think 9. And she hands the baby to Frankie Nine Fingers, and she leaves and goes back in the house. And he said in his 30 plus years of working in the field, he had never had a mother whose baby was in distress that she just hands over and walks away. He is intubating this baby by himself in the front yard, and the mom leaves. Can you guess where this is going yet? So everyone finally arrives on scene. They do end up transporting baby Jacob after they've already intubated him in the front yard. And although he did survive, he did have a lack of oxygen to his brain for a substantial amount of time, and he ended up brain dead but on life support at the hospital. Luminol in the bathroom, and sure enough, they found blood everywhere when she disconnected the phone, and when she wasn't answering the front door, and when she wouldn't let Frankie Nine Fingers in the house. Apparently she was cleaning up the blood, and what they determined happened was that she aggressively beat him so hard that his rectum tore, and he was bleeding out from his rectum. She did end up being convicted, and once the state took full custody of baby Jacob, they made the decision to take him off of life support. Remember when I told you guys that I was going to do this series? I told you that I worked with some really excellent officers and then like 1 to 7 bad apples. The detective who was working this case had a picture of baby Jacob that he had been given by a family member, and he kept that picture on his desk until that case was closed as a reminder of who he was fighting for, and I thought that was really cool, and I'll never forget that detective.
The guy I met in Hawaii. A little bit of background information. I went to Hawaii on vacation with my family, my best friend's family, and it was for me and my best friend's birthday. It was like our sweet 16. Just to clear it up now, I do not live in Hawaii. That was confusing last video. Basically, I went to the pool. This was the second day we had been there, and I see the cutest guy ever, okay? Like, when I tell you guys he's the cutest guy, I'm not joking. I was like my jaw dropped. So the whole night, I'm giving him looks, he's giving me looks, and no one really acted on it though. But I was like worried he was gonna think I was weird because he looks like 17, guys. He looks old as hell. But it was time for me to leave, and I got up and left. And literally the minute I left, I was like, oh my god, I might never see him again. I don't know when his spring break is. I don't know how long he's staying for. Like, I'm fucked. But like, I had hope. So a day goes by and I don't see him. I'm still thinking about him, but you know, didn't see him. Then the day after, I see him at the pool again, and he's just like in the balcony part overlooking the pool. And he's with his sister again, and they're not in bathing suits. And I see him, and like a second later, he sees me, and he whispers something to his sister. I don't know what he said, because I think it was in a different language. And they run, they book it. I'm like, ooh, what? Like, what did I do? Like, oh my god. And I'm like, damn, he must be really old if that's like the reaction I got. So I get into the pool and I see him and he's with his sister and they're like making their way down to the pool in bathing suits. And I was like, wow, that's a coincidence. So he gets in the pool. We're still giving each other like a lot of looks because this time it's like, oh, one of us is gonna have to do something now. And basically the whole night goes by and all we're doing is just giving looks. It had been about like 2 hours and my parents were like, look, like we gotta go, like the pool's about to close, wrap it up. I'm like, bruh, I just blew another shot to talk to this guy and like I'm probably never gonna get another one. So I was like sad and I am about to leave and I turn around to get like one last look at him because, you know, like whatever, I don't know. And he's like looking at me, he's like, come here. And I'm like, what? He's like, come here. I'm like, okay. I book it over there and he's like, what's your name? I'm like, my name's Aaliyah, what's your name? He's like, I'm Jake. Where are you from? I'm like, California. He's like, I live in California too. He's like, you're really pretty. I was like, thank you. And he's like, is it okay if I get your number? And I'm like, yes, of course, guys. Like, of course. So I give him my number and I leave and we start texting. And like, you know, it's hard to tell if like the person you're talking to over text like matches your energy. This like wasn't the case at all. Like he was funny, he was like energetic, and he had like the humor. Like it was so easy to just talk to him, you know? And he explained the whole pool situation and how him and his sister went back to their room to go get bathing suits and come back so he could talk to me. I was like, what the fuck? And then we decide after we've texted for a little bit, he's like, I think we should meet up and hang out. And I'm like, yeah. So we plan to meet up and the plan was to like go explore in the jungle. So we meet up and we go like exploring and stuff. Guys, there were so many bugs, it wasn't funny. But like it was fine because when we like got to talking, I was like, this guy's so like, he's so chill. Like he was so funny. Like he's funny over text, and you know if someone's funny over text, they're extremely funny in person. So I was like, oh my god, this guy's like, where did he come from? He's perfect. And we're just like having fun. We're like laughing and stuff. We're both like tripping because we were like on a hill and it was funny as fuck. But then it was like time for me to leave and we were both like bummed, so we figured out a plan to hang out that night. So I leave and we say bye and we part ways. When I get back, I tell my siblings the plan me and him made. They're like, we want to meet him. I'm like, bruh. I'm like, ugh, okay. I run it past him thinking he was gonna be like, oh no, never mind. He was like, yeah, of course, like I love hanging out with kids, like kids are so fun. I was like, what? I was like, are you being for real right now? He's like, yeah, of course. I'm like, where the fuck did you come from? Like, guys, he was so funny and talkative and sweet and just like, the good with kids part got me. Like, let's be for real, everyone loves that. So we go down to the pool and we all hang out, and keep in mind, it was also my best friend and her sister too. It wasn't just my siblings, like, it was a crap ton of people, and he was totally fine with it. And I was like, oh my god, this guy's like being for real about me, you know what I mean? And he was playing with my siblings, we like played tag, and he was like such a good sport with everything. He was asking my siblings questions, he was like trying to get to know them, you know? And then it's getting late, and I tell him, I'm like, look, we gotta go. And he's like, that's okay, like I gotta go too, whatever. And that was the last time I saw him. And through the rest of the vacation, we're still talking like normal. Like he was still giving 100%, and like, as everyone knows, not many people do that. So we both get back from our vacation and we still talk like all the time, and we're still really good friends. So that's
Story time on my toxic childhood friend. Growing up, I had this best friend. We're gonna call her Libby. I met Libby
in year 7, so I was 11 years old. It was at the beginning of year 7, and we became best friends like this. We did absolutely everything together, and I was obsessed with her. Like, nobody had ever made me feel so special in my life. It was like the weirdest experience. So in either year 7 or year 8, her family actually ended up moving to the same street that I lived on. So naturally, we got so close. I've put so much of this on, oh my god. So we became friends with this group of boys pretty quickly, and soon I wasn't getting an invite out. And at this point, I think about 2 months had gone, where I was not allowed out when these boys were with my friends. And she used to tell me, she used to say, it's because they don't like you, they find you irritating, like they just don't really want to be around you, you talk too much, and like they just don't want you in our group. And so this obviously made me feel really, really uncomfortable. I was like 13 maybe. But then about 2 months later, she's like, you can come out with us, but you're not allowed to wear makeup at all. My OG followers, you guys will remember, like the thick eyebrows. I used to be very keen on makeup, etc. So it was a little bit of a culture shock for me, but I was like, no, I want to go out with these friends. I want to go out with these people. Like, I want them to like me. So I'll just go. And oh my god, it was one of the worst experiences of my life. The whole time we were with these boys, I was the punchline. Every single time. And it got to the point where she would, like, to make it seem funny, she would like hit me and like slap me really hard, or like make up lies about me. Now this girl was like the sort of person that you wanted to be friends with. You either really wanted to or you really didn't. She was like Marmite. And I obviously really wanted to be friends with her, so I just put up with all of her bullshit for ages. When I say ages, I mean years, like 6 or 7 years of being on and off friends. And then she would start blaming me for things. So if she did something, it was my fault. Or like, if she fell out with someone, it was my fault. And then she would be fine with them, and I would be in absolute shit. And like, she was my best friend, bearing in mind. I would be added into group chats with like people literally just slamming me. And this was my best friend doing this as well. And at the time, she would just play it off after. She'd be like, no, like the girls just added you into it and I just stayed in there to like try and see if everything's okay. But she would be the worst one. Like, she would be going for me. Don't get me wrong, like this girl wasn't all bad. Like, when she's friends with you and she likes you, it is the most euphoric feeling. Like, she makes you feel like you are the most important person, and because she's so horrible to everyone else, when she's nice to you, it is such an ego boost. It got to the point where she was commenting on my body weight so much and calling me fat all the time, even though I was smaller than she was, that I just stopped eating. And then at this point that I stopped eating, I started losing more and more weight. And by this point, in her eyes, I was anorexic. So she started commenting on stuff like how small my arms looked, how disgusting and bony I was, how my collarbones were like really prominent. And she just said I looked ill and emaciated. So I started wearing collar necks, like turtlenecks. And I wore these for about 8 months. I didn't take them off. It was summer and I was in a like long sleeve, long rolled turtlenecks. Like, my nickname from her was literally Miss Piggy, because she said I look like a pig. But that's genuinely not even the worst of it. The worst of it is when I got ill and I was admitted to hospital. When I was in hospital, I started getting texts from people in my school saying, why are you faking? It's really disgusting what you're doing. Can't believe you would do something like this. And then the bombshell hit. This girl had gone around the school and told people that my mum had cancer and I was pretending it was me for attention. You cannot make this shit up. I wish I was joking. I didn't know this at the time. So this girl was visiting me whilst I was in the hospital, whilst I was extremely underweight and malnourished and fatigued, and she was coming in to visit me and play games with me in the game room while she was telling everyone that my mum had cancer and I was pretending it was me for attention. And then I get added into another group chat, and I am being attacked. I am genuinely being brought through the gutter. In my life, I am 19 years old now. In my life, this was probably the worst I had ever felt. These girls were saying things like, I wish you would get cancer so that, like, you could be paid back for, like, what you're doing. I can't even remember half of it because it was quite traumatic, but it was horrible, like, horrible. And at this point, this girl is adding me into all these group chats, but I'm stupid enough to, like, not think that she has as big of a problem with it. So she's still coming to visit me in the hospital. I basically told the whole school that I pretended to have cancer whilst I was in hospital, which is a little bit bizarre, but you do you, babe, you do you. And then so we obviously fall out because of this, because I found out probably about 7 months into being in hospital, and then I was discharged from hospital and I went home. And my dumb ass, I'm genuinely not even joking, I became friends with her again. I wish I was kidding. I don't know why, but we ended up becoming friends. And then, so her boyfriend at the time, I'd known him since I was about 9 or 10 years old, and I was obviously off school because I wasn't well. One day when I was off school, I was having a cigarette outside of my house with him. I was a kid that smoked. Terrible, I know. Anyway, and her sister drives past, and she says that she's seen her boyfriend in my bedroom with me, even though A, you can't see into my bedroom because you just can't see in, and B, no. Anyway, so obviously we fall out and she's like, you're a slag, you fucked my boyfriend, like, you're done. Even though, like, her boyfriend had literally tried it on with me so many times, and I was like, no, because you're not a bit of me, babe. Yeah, aim for me. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying. Fall out because of this, because, I mean, who wouldn't? And then I go up to her house to get my stuff, because we were the sort of friends that, like, shared everything. And I was like, I want to come get my stuff. And she was like, yeah, mum said you can come up, come and get it. I knock on the door, her mum answers. Her mum had no idea I was coming. And you're not even prepared for the things that this 50-year-old woman was screaming at me on the street. She was calling me a whore. She was calling me a slag. She was like, you fake your illness. She was like, there was so many things. Let me just try and think. Let me just try and conjure up. I got called a vile cretin. A vile cretin. By a 50-year-old woman. And I'm genuinely not even joking. Like, whore, slag, all got thrown at me. It was a weird situation. Anyway, so my best friend who had driven me up, like her boyfriend had driven me up, and then we get in the car, we all leave, and I never spoke to her again. They also accused me of, like, stealing her stuff. A, I don't steal, B, her stuff wasn't nice enough to steal, do you know what I mean? So, is that like a very compliment? Can I? Yeah. I'm an adult, I can do what I want. It's my life, There's a lot more about the relationship that I could say, and I definitely won't because it's not PG enough to put online. But yeah, that is my toxic childhood best friend. She was lovely. She was great.
Imagine joking to your coworkers about being scared that your partner might unalive you, and then it actually happens. In February 2000, a man named John Price kicked out his partner Katherine Knight after an argument in which she stabbed him in the chest. They had a rocky relationship from the start, with Katherine having a violent past, but Price liked her and his children liked her, so he gave it a chance. During this time, though, she would attack him and even got him fired from his job of 17 years. Their final argument, in which she stabbed him, was the final straw, as he was afraid of the violence escalating and putting his children in danger. On February 28th, he stopped at the courts to obtain a restraining order in an attempt to keep her away from both him and his children. That afternoon, Price had told his coworkers that if he didn't come to work the next day, it was because Knight had unalived him. Despite their pleas for him not to go home, he stated that he was scared that she would unalive his children if he didn't. When he arrived home, he found out that Knight had sent his children away to sleep over at a friend's. That's when he decided to spend the evening with his neighbors before returning home and going to bed at 11 p.m. Knight arrived at Price's house while he was asleep. She watched TV for a few minutes and then showered and woke him up to have intercourse. They did the deed and went to sleep. At 6 a.m. the next day, a neighbor was concerned after seeing Price's car still in the driveway, and when he didn't arrive for work, his employer sent a worker to go see what was wrong. After no one answered the door and they noticed blood on the front door, they immediately contacted police. When they showed up, they see a grisly scene of Price's mutilated body and Katherine comatose from taking a large number of pills. She had stabbed Price 37 times with a butcher's knife while he was sleeping. Remarkably, during the attack, he was able to escape while Knight chased him through the house. He made it to the front door and got outside, but he either stumbled back in or was dragged back in the hallway where he finally passed after bleeding out. However, the nightmare didn't end there. Knight was a highly skilled meat worker and became dubbed as the female Hannibal Lecter because she skinned him in such a way that his face, nose, ears, neck, torso, genital organs, and legs were removed in a way to form one pelt. She then hung his pelt on a meat hook on the door of the lounge room where it remained until it was later removed by investigators. She also removed his head and parts of his buttocks. These parts were taken to the kitchen where Knight cooked his head in a large pot with vegetables and other ingredients to make a stew. She also baked parts of his body in the oven. The gruesome steaks were then arranged on plates that were left for his son and daughter. Knight claimed that she had no recollection of the night that John Price died and pled not guilty. On October 2001, her trial commenced, and for unknown reasons, she changed her plea to guilty, and the judge adjourned the case without testimony. She became the first woman in Australia to be given the life sentence without parole. To this day, she maintains her innocence and refuses to accept the responsibility of her actions. Now in her 60s, she's serving a life sentence at Silverwater Women's Correctional Center.